All right, good morning, guys. All right. It's Third Pillar Thursday. Hey, my screen is off. That's not right. Bam. That's a little bit better. Whatever. Seems like there's a lot of activity in the chat. Everyone's got their crisp uniforms on, getting ready to launch off. Yes. Good morning, everyone. We even have a ship designer. We've got a place to go. Thanks, guys. And apparently, for some reason, people find the word moist to be a little bit off-putting. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it sounds like what it looks like. No. Anyway, it's Third Pillar Thursday. We're almost done. We've been talking about split the party. I can't go back through the chat. It's just, you guys are just strange. Although I did put in the chat, like, you've got to see the moist. It's got that it like starts out nice and innocent and then ends with like the sound of like gumming a banana. I think that's the idea. And anyway, there was the new Mortal Engines, or no, a second Mortal Engines trailer was released, and it got me going. It's very very world building. It's awesome. If you're into diesel punk, yeah, it'll really get you excited. And I think there's an element of like magic involved in it or something like that. Like, I'm not exactly sure if it takes place on Earth. Anyway, splitting the party. Third pillar Thursday. Okay, so what is Third Pillar Thursday? For those who don't know, Third Pillar Thursday involves the environment. My specialty, basically, the thing that I'm helping to write for Critical Hit Publishing, amongst other things. And with the first and second pillars being combat and social interaction. So how can we take our split the party and use like the environment and make like encounters that have to do where we don't have to be scared of splitting the party in your games and such, like almost setting it up. Okay, so let's come up with some examples, because we always got to pull some examples. You know me, I like to pull them out of movies and things. The examples that I can think of are ones where instead of just, killing the bad guy, beat the bad guy. Hey, Prue. Everybody, Azala, thank you for joining again. Gnu, hey, he showed up a little late yesterday. Gonna have to punish you, bad Gnu. Things. Alex, he says quakes, fissures, crowds, flooding, and other things. Can't think of at the moment. That's plenty to think of. All right, so you've got yourself a situation where you've like the classic like earthquake or volcano and fissures. You were talking about crowds and flooding and other natural disasters. And what happens in those situations, right? The ground shakes, the ground shakes, it splits, and guess what? You've got people on one side and people on the other side. Vincent says that there's certain traps designed to separate the team, like pitfalls and things. Dead Man says underwater, flight, wind, ice storms, all those things. Of course, I love them. I hold them dear. Alex, he says, "I'm in the hole." Yeah. All of those things are suddenly create situations where some of the party is split. Someone's down in a hole, someone's above. Someone is on one side of a fissure, someone's on the other side of the fissure. And you may have dangers on both sides, maybe above or below. Someone gets stuck in an avalanche or gets swept away in a flood. And by splitting the objectives as well, in those situations can make for the PCs having to pick what they're going to do. It's the room is flooding. We've got to roll the stone in the way of the rushing water or we're all going to drown. And then the troll steps out of the darkness and it's like, okay, you hold off the troll. We're going to move the stone so we all don't drown or something, right? Or There's a big fissure, it splits, half the party's on one side, half the party's on the other side, and it's like half of us need to get to one side, and I don't know, rescue the people that are trapped, and the other group is like, well, we need to go get the gold, or stop the bomb, or whatever the case may be. And essentially what you want to do is you want to have different objectives and such. Azala says, I mentioned this in a Discord earlier, but in sci-fi settings, a lot of players I've seen have an abject terror of space, going so far as to wear armor to sleep and never bathe for fear of being space. You got that right. And how awesome is it to have, like, the objective is to spacewalk. It's to, walk on the outer skin of the habitat, to maybe have to leap across dead space without, a cable, or booster jets or something like that, or magnetic boots to get to someplace else, because the station you're in is, I don't know, falling into the atmosphere, or is disintegrating, or being impacted by micrometeorites or something of that nature. Vince says, I had this in a Numenera once. I mixed in a space station mentioned in Into the Night. Yeah, space stations. Guys, that's tomorrow. Anyway, Azala says, it's just an interesting thing for me, since a lot of older space sci-fi writers were nudists and often incorporated a lot. Hadn't thought about that one, but some of them were a little bit racy. Yeah. Dead Man says, smart vac clothing that auto seals when the atmosphere fails. Yeah, in space no one can hear you scream, or maybe you don't want to if you do it in your pants. Vincent says, well, if you go for a spacewalk, I suggest a spacesuit, or at least those slap-on force fields like they used in Guardians 2. Yeah, you can always the equipment that you use isn't the important thing. It's like setting up the tension to get them to use it in the first place. It's the countdown, the red flashing light, the klaxons, the alarms going off as they have to, I don't know, get into the sealed room, or gravity starts to fail and they have to, like, make their way through floating debris and that kind of thing. But essentially, like back to the subject of splitting the party in an environment, having different objectives, and then having things like whether, like mentioned earlier, like whether there's like ice storms or floods or natural environments. There's plenty of thriller movies where, I don't know, thieves try to rob a bank during a storm, or terrorists try to take over like a ship at sea, and there's like a bad storm that comes across, or the average family, or innocent hunters or travelers or something go out into the woods, and they're surrounded by woodlands and steep hills and mountains and forests and everything. And then, of course, some bad guys, I don't know, crash in a helicopter or a plane or something, or they kidnap someone and they're trying to take them across country or across the border. And then hilarity ensues as there's a big conflict. And then you're able to, the objective might be to get away and or go after the bad guys and or rescue someone and or retrieve a I don't know, an antitoxin, or a hardline phone that can reach help or something if you find it, or get to the highest location so you can send up a signal so someone can find you, and all the things involved by choosing whether, okay, does someone climb up a tree? Is someone down on the ground? Did someone slip and fall? Did someone slide in the mud? And using those elements, reskinning some traps, some layers, if you want to, adding some, if you fail this roll, you're going to slip and fall in the mud, and then applying those same limitations even to your bad guys, right? If there's a flash flood, one or more people could get swept away, and that could be a surprise to you and the PCs and the bad guys. We're hanging out in the way back there. What the hell's going on? It's trying to escape. Why'd the chat go away? Okay. Yeah, Prue says the party could be split because of natural catastrophes. Dead Man, the storyteller, says just used in eclipse phase. The human body is sufficient to protect from vacuum as long as you evacuate the air from your lungs. That's absolutely actually that's absolutely true. Although we love the idea of you know, people freezing instantly in vacuum, but that's actually not the case. This says, as I already said, having multiple objectives is a good way to split the party. Why not incorporate that into the environment? Levers to be pulled, ropes to be fixed, water to be redirected. Exactly. If the idea is like the flash flood thing, you know, maybe there's a large truck or a wagon or a big creature or something that everyone can hang on to, someone maybe has to go get it and pull it into the raging floodwaters. But maybe at the exact same time, there's a large box that has the MacGuffin in it, and someone has to, you know, tie a rope around that and grab that. And then at the same time, there are, I don't know, alligator folk that are reskinned as lizard folk, and they're attacking you. And so, you know, splitting the attention, having different objectives, winning without the only win situation being kill the bad guys. It could just be get to higher ground, you know. Those are the kind of things that I'm talking about, whereas where each person on their own and then as a group has to decide, okay, what's more important? Is it me and my character getting the spotlight? Is it me and my character having his moment? Or is it us getting to a certain location or achieving a particular goal or grabbing an object or what have you, navigating a particular dangerous location? What is it? And then letting the PCs pick that up. Gnu says the main issue is giving everyone something to do. If half the party is in a fight and the other half is just doing skill checks, they might feel uninvolved. I'm going to challenge you on that. I don't believe that you're wrong, but I'm going to challenge you on that. Using 5e or just about any other game, a skill check and an attack roll are basically the same thing, right? It's offering the same results for the same rolls. Okay, so for example, if you make an attack roll, you follow that up with, oh, I successfully hit this person, I'm going to roll some damage. When someone is making skill rolls, they should have the same output. They should have the same results of some sort, whether it's sabotaging something or requiring 3 skill rolls to achieve a particular goal. Otherwise, the danger just begins to keep ramping up. So if the skill rolls offer the same end result, a same win condition, then I don't see much of a difference. It's just the fact of, I think we as role players tend to like, oh, a skill roll is the useless thing. Combat is better, right? And getting rid of that mindset and saying that a person should be just as effective in the game doesn't necessarily have to be the most combat effective, but if they are they are just as effective, then everything works out. R2D2 helping to, you know, unlock the doors for the rest of his friends while they're trapped in the trash compactor is an effective member of that group, right? It just because R2D2 didn't shoot a blaster bolt doesn't mean that they're not effective. And I think it's just changing the mindset of letting players sabotage things, letting players deactivate robots, having players be able to tumble rocks down on enemies or tie a rope across a hallway and have them trip the enemies, or piling debris in front of a door so it stops the orcs coming through, or things like that. Just allowing them to do those things, I think, just builds that up. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. Yeah, Vincent says I think it depends on the impact of what they do. Alex C says to me, anyone doing something, even if it may seem little, they're still involved. Bruce says, good point, but if the other party is making skill checks in order to reach your friends, that might be fun, right? Vincent says if it's just something boring or unnecessary, it might be. But if what they do may separate the army of the enemy from your party, it may be more important than holding back the enemies. Yeah, exactly what I was saying. Yeah, GNU says, I'd agree, but I feel it's more about the players and what they consider interesting, which is absolutely true, right? It's the sometimes we do get wrapped up in sometimes we do get wrapped up into like a player character makes a build, right? My character is a perfect sniper. My character is a great martial artist. My character is a spellcaster. You know, my character is carries a big weapon and does the most damage. And unfortunately, what happens is they're not, in many games, don't consider the setting to be part and parcel of their character. If your character is very good, like if you're a Jackie Chan type character where you're using the environment, you know, to help you fight, and you're not given those opportunities, then the player characters aren't going to think about using the environment to help them. So offering those opportunities for your players to use it, I think. And then showing examples, having your bad guys use it, I think could, you know, encourage your players to go, you mean I can, you know, back the truck up and stop the enemies from flooding in through that door? Sure, maybe I'll do that. Or you mean I can set off the fire alarms or something? You know, I can, I don't know, knock over the barrels of oil and set it on fire. It's like, yeah, sure, go for it. I don't, you know, let's do it. Yes. Janny says, excuse me. There we go. Okay, got it back. Azala says the co-op in Portal 2 could be a good example. One part of the party doing one thing to help the second party get through an area or problem. I absolutely agree with that. There's plenty of I couldn't name the sheer number of video games that have that kind of thing involved where either another party member or part of your you know, part of the bot is that you have to set something in motion. Maybe someone has to press a button while someone else walks across the bridge, and so one person has to sit back and keep their hand on something that allows everyone else to cross the bridge, and then someone has to help that person get across. Like people escaping bad guys jumping across rooftops, and the rooftops gap gets bigger and bigger, right? Azala says, Prue mentioned time travel stuff. How about a time-trapped dungeon where one group is stuck in the past, has to change things, unlock doors, etc., to get the group in the future or the present through? I like that. Vincent says there's certain types of players who enjoy interacting with the environment more than just hitting enemies. I personally love to be involved and fight in unexpected ways or find advantages. Yeah. Yeah, Azala says you can have the smarty pants of the group solving puzzles while the fighting guys go through and fight. Exactly. And if you just give those options, yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. Somebody always wants to be the smarty pants, and then giving them the effectiveness equal to the people that are fighting, I think would really help out. It's hard to balance that, but yeah, absolutely. Actually, Jackie Chan, kick-ass and amusing at the same time. Right, exactly. Yeah, Fat Ninja says, well put. Everybody's role in the game has merit and worth, and I think the idea there is that let me give an example. I'm going off on a tangent for next week. We thought about taking our favorite mechanics. There is a rules-light system called ICRPG from Runehammer. The index card role-playing games. Great game, very simple. It's basically a D20 type system. The same stats, you know, strength, dex, whatever. But in the game, he uses the same armor class hit point thing to solve problems as you would enemies. So let's say you have a locked door. The door has itself it's not necessarily armor class, it's a difficulty. Let's say difficulty is 12. The door may have 10 hit points. So the thief trying to open the door has to roll, and there's a you get a die called it's not an effectiveness die. It's called a work, I believe. Anyway, the person trying to unlock the door has to do 10 hit points to the door to get through, just as the enemies come rushing through the door, and the warrior has to do 10 hits to the the gnolls that are attacking. And the same thing could be applied to solving other problems in the game, right? If there is a situation, you could apply just a difficulty and a number of successes to get through it, or a number of successes to find it, or a number of successes to achieve it, right? If someone wants to sabotage, the castle walls, and hey, I'm going to grab the horses and tie a rope to them and have them pull down the wooden watchtower, then say, okay, well, you have to make 3 animal handling checks, and if you do it, you knock down the watchtower and the crossbow snipers that are all in it, and you take out all the enemies or something, right? It may not be direct, you are doing 30 hit points of damage, but effectively, this one cool thing that they do might be just as effective as doing, like, say, 3 rounds of combat, Vincent said, I had a dungeon similar to Hypercube once, where you had a bunch of rooms connected to constantly switching portals. I like that idea. Vincent says, I had a lot of GMs who did this interacting with the environment very poorly, where you spend like 2 whole turns cutting the chandelier and then does like 1d6 damage to one enemy. Yeah, that doesn't make sense, right? If you're going to, if someone is going to expend the resource of 3 rounds of combat, then their effectiveness at the end of it should be equal to like 3 rounds of combat. That's how I look at it, right? If you're going to make a skill roll, it's like making an attack roll, just done in a different way. Azala says, yeah, I had enemies do that to me. Strength check to catch it, then use it as a flail to smash them. Vince says he didn't even do that. It just can get very disappointing if the effect does not match the intended effect. Same thing for fire in D&D. Per default, it does like 1d6 fire damage per round. Lighting something on fire is oftentimes not very effective in combat, and that's the thing, right? Many games, I would say most role-playing games, don't take into effect the generalized sabotage of something, take into effect the use of the environment, which is why I'm single-handedly trying to be I am your self-appointed third pillar-ist, right? It's the idea that, yes, you can use the environment, and I think it should be balanced. It should be as balanced for the people using it as those who are just swinging their sword and attacking stuff, right? If the, I don't know, the bard or whatever in your game has this great idea to drop the portcullis on the raging creature that's trying to come after them, and you tell them that they need to make a roll to time it outright, or they need to make 3 rolls to do so, the end result should be 3 times as effective, or just as effective as that warrior swinging their sword 3 times, right? It should, the outcome should match the energy, the effort put into it. I definitely agree with that, and I feel like we often, there's a tendency to want to, because there are very few rules on it, there's a tendency to downplay it because many people are not experienced in using it, and there are very few examples in using it, and so it always defaults to the minimum effectiveness because there are very few examples, and many GMs probably don't know how to handle it, and it's far more effective to go, well, we've got 87 pages of combat, let's go back to the combat, right? Vincent says, Deadman says it illuminates the target, which is also possible too. Why not? Especially like if you're in a dark area, foggy, rainstorm or something like that. Vince says it just doesn't match what we expect in real life. If you light someone on fire in real life, you'll be at least panic and try to put it out. In some RPGs, it's just like a minor debuff. And yeah, it's yeah, most, like I said, most games they don't do that. And even a good role player, you know, as a game master, you should role play your actions, right? If someone's lit on fire, role play the enemies trying to put themselves out on fire. You know, put the fire out. People will, you know, stop, drop, and roll. They'll grab a cover and try to pat themselves out. They'll jump into the water. They'll run away from things to jump in the swimming pool out back, or get splashed by something or whatever. You know, just role play the enemies in their situation. You know, that's the thing. Azala says the big thing with fire is that it hurts. No one wants to be on fire. If someone is on fire, they aren't going to stand around and slug it out. They're going to run around like they are in fact on fire. Exactly. And that may be what turns the tide, right? If a player dumps oil on some enemies and lights them on fire just because the fire does 1d6 damage and they've got 87 hit points, that doesn't negate the fact that this is a role-playing game, and as close to the reality of your setting as possible, the adversary should react in the same way, right? I absolutely believe that. Gnu says, so most RPGs don't like environmental damage to be similar in power to weapon damage. I think that's because some people feel like it draws the spotlight away from the person who is the skilled individual with the weapon. But I think it's been done so much to put special abilities in the hands of the players that now the environment is completely ignored. You'll get that complaint from people who are OSR aficionados, where it was all about using your intelligence, using the environment, using common sense, and more now it's about player character capabilities rather than very minor capabilities, and then having to use your wits to outwit what's going on around you. Alex C says, I would use the chandelier. We used like the plus D6 10-foot drop, and then a D10, 1D10 for the object onto the creature that is unfortunate or on a successful attack. And why not add some conditions in there? Being knocked prone, being trapped, being entangled or grappled, stunned, blinded, all those things too. You know, dropping the tapestry over top of the bad guy's head could blind them temporarily until maybe the bad guy has to take an action to slice through or remove the tapestry off of them. And in the meantime, the PCs give the troll the blanket party, right? I mean, you know, allow those things to happen. Why? It would happen in a movie, it would happen in a book, it would happen in real life. Why not let it happen in the game? You know, that's where GM fiat, that's where, to me, the idea of quote unquote the rules don't matter. I think people feel like, oh, you're just throwing the rules out, and that's not the case. It's how can I apply what I know about this game to this situation to make my own rulings, to make it as not just beneficial, but as dramatic, as tension building, as exciting in the game, not making it fall on one side or the other, or quote unquote trying to nerf someone's player character or something like that. It's about changing the spotlight around. If your bard is useless against the armored troll, but has this idea of dropping a tapestry on them, hey, you make that successful roll. Yes, you blinded them, and they may be that now someone could light the tapestry on fire or something like that, just as an example. Vincent says same thing for falling damage. You could throw a high level BBG down a tower and he would just be annoyed. Exactly. I absolutely agree with that too. Scott Poe says the support colors should either kill or trap or lame the creature. Monsters are going to die anyway. Might as well die at the most cinematic moment. Hell yeah. If someone's got a great idea like that and they pull it off, you got to give it to them, right? I mean, how Luke Skywalker did that when he's fighting the beast. You know, it's like Jabba traps him down there. Everyone's laughing at him. He's fighting the beast. He tries to stick the bone in his mouth. He runs over, and here comes he zaps the door. The portcullis comes down, traps his head, kills him. I mean, how do you adjudicate that? Well, you give it to him, right? You know what I mean? Hey, this roll is disadvantaged, but if you do it, you get a crit hit on it or something like that, right? Whatever. Anyway, GNU says they want their weapons and abilities to be super impressive. Can't be outdone by a barbecue. You make a point. Although I like barbecue. Vince says, I think the problem is that some players would just use the environment all the time, or you could conjure up a block of adamantine and squash your enemies under 1,000 tons of weight. By the way, a DOT, damage over time. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Yeah, damage over time. Which in and of itself, right? Creating. The thing is that despite what the environment is, it's not an infinite source of get over, right? Just because there's a barrel of oil you can light on fire doesn't mean there's also 30 more barrels of oil that are always present all the time ad infinitum. It's like, I think the idea of being able to use the environment also has its own limitations. Knocking rocks down on top of the enemy to cause an avalanche and trap them, or knock them in the head, or split up the enemies that are tracking you doesn't mean that, oh, there's 30 more attempts I can use this. If I can just keep knocking rocks down on them, I'm better than everyone else. Like, no, it's like, hey, you got one chance to do it. If it fails, oh, well. If it does, if you knock the rocks down, it creates difficult terrain, and everyone has to make like a DC 15 check to climb over top of it or something, right? Or it creates 3/4 cover between everyone on one side of the rocks and on the other side of the rocks. Or if you make a roll and it does 2d12 damage, and whatever damage you roll, that becomes a difficulty to try to escape out of being trapped inside the rocks or something. Like, you could come up with all kinds of things. And now, does it mean the enemies can do the same thing? Of course. Has the environment changed now that you did what you did? Of course. And it's just rolling with it too. I like those surprises as a game master, dungeon master. It doesn't bother me at all. Chat. Yeah, here we go. Azala says, I don't know about you, but Dale Gribble's pocket sand attack is useful for any situation. Yeah, the sand in the eye idea, that's the blinding the enemy while you're throwing some sand. Absolutely. Vincent says they had a similar problem with the jug of endless water earlier. Players would just fill dungeon rooms with water and swim through. That doesn't sound too good. I don't know too many PCs that would want to swim through it. I mean, yeah, sure, it would, kill the enemies. And although, what is that? The jug of endless water. I don't know how fast it could fill a dungeon. I think it would give them some time to escape, maybe. Or, I've heard of the light the dungeon on fire and wait till all the enemies are dead kind of thing. But, realistically, like, would they wait for hours while everything catches on fire, fills with water? That's not very realistic either. GNU says, well, when we think of environmental damage, we think if real life, not laser or sword wounds. So we think of, bug falls or being caught on fire as lethal, when in most RPGs, fatal is way too extreme. And actually, I agree with you on that, GNU. Like, most fatal attacks, even in role-playing games, aren't really fatal. We do tend to think of in real life, like, hey, you fall out of a plane, you're dead. You fall off a tower, you're dead. You're held underwater for a half an hour, you're dead. Whereas, in most role-playing games, you have more than a 50% chance of escaping most dangers just by a simple skill roll or ability check or something. And that's because, real life isn't fun. Being the hero is fun. So I know we tend to think of, well, falling damage doesn't do anything, but I think maybe we're thinking of it in a different context. Most heroes have their fall mitigated some kind of way. They land in something soft. They hit a couple of tree branches on their way down and they're just stunned. Someone, the hero doesn't light on fire completely. Their arm lights on fire and they pat it out or something. Or someone takes a carpet and like smothers it out or whatever, Whereas in real life, maybe they might catch on fire and completely die or suffocate. or the hero is underwater for a long time and everyone sits around them and they try to resuscitate them, and all they do is they spit up the water. Yes, they died, they're back in 5 minutes, and now they're getting ready to run down the alleyway. I think that's just a cinematic way that most role-playing games handle that kind of stuff. That's all. I think it's just, I think we as people are not crafting the end result in the cinematic manner in which the heroes survive those situations. We just think, oh, you were in a car accident, you should have died. It's like, no, you were in a car accident and you miraculously survived. Poo says, how far away from each other would you say you start changing the mechanics from group to split the party settings, if that makes sense? I know exactly what you mean. I do. I think that the idea is like, is 50 feet, 100 feet. Like when are you literally splitting that kind of thing? Alex, he's so up, down, left, right. 99 barrels of oil on fire, 99 barrels of oil. I get it. Silly. I do get what Prue is saying about, like, if the PCs are a mile away from each other, are they really interacting in the same scene? It does become a tricky thing, because I think part of it depends on if one group of the PCs is having an immediate effect on the other PCs. Is the hacker who has to unlock the doors immediately affecting what the PCs are doing, even if the hacker is 50 miles away, or sitting in the armored truck while the PCs are blasting their way through the military barracks, right? If they are immediately affecting the PCs, I think essentially they're in the same room, air quotes. If they are not having any effect on the other group, I think you really are splitting the party, and there might be divergent things, unless you absolutely set a timer in motion. Let me get back to the chat just a little bit. Azala says, in one game, our DM had us fight a demon in its lair, part of which was a large spiked grating in the roof. Our druid used stone to mud to drop it on the demon, killing it instantly. Pretty idea. Pretty good. Horrible spelling on my phone. Thanks for translating. Yeah, you're fine. Vincent says, most RPGs focus on action, combat, environment exploring, and act more under the action movie logic than real life logic. Absolutely. I think that's the default for 5th edition, right? It's my hit points are 0 and I get back up the next round kind of thing, is action movie logic. Heroes always get bullets and spikes through their hands, ankles broken, ribs busted, and they get right back up the next time, right? The hero the enemy takes a spike and rams it through their hand when they're captured, but then all of a sudden all they do is they wrap a dirty cloth around their hand and they're like punching people with their fist, right? That's not real. It would take months of therapy and surgeries to get their hand back together. But how about the end of the cop movie? They've been shot and beat up and they go, I don't need help, I'm getting back into the action. That's the exact same thing. Yeah, Vincent says, and on higher levels, they become more like superhero movie logic. I agree with that, absolutely. Foolish Kiwi says, I always imagine D&D in heavily inked, dark, serious anime style. Anyway, so the slightly outlandish physics and heroic survivability never felt too out of place. Vincent says, it seems like DBJ understands you better than I do, Prue. Yeah, I am your patron, follow me. Thanks, Vince. I'm now imagining Shining DBJ fighting Dementors. Yeah, no, I see what Prue was talking about in terms of the distance between players, and I would say it's the effectiveness of the players. So if a ton of enemies, let's make this example, right? If a ton of enemies are pouring through a portal from another dimension, right? So you've got your combat people, they're fighting the demons pouring through the other dimension. and they're running around the castle or whatever, fighting the demons, you might have the other players who maybe are trying to shut down the portal. Maybe a wizard's trying to read a particular spell. Other players are trying to like push heavy materials in front of it, maybe drop a portcullis or move the giant stone in front of it. And because of that, despite how far away they are from each other, the effectiveness would mean that the one person trying to close the portal with a big giant stone is having a direct impact on the other people who are fighting the demons, let's say, running around. Let's say a building is on fire, it's modern day, and someone's trying to, I don't know, it's the Nakatomi building, and the terrorists have taken over the building, and one of the PCs wants to turn on the fire alarms to get the fire sprinklers going again to put out the fire that's spreading up the building. Well, if they're in the basement trying to find the fire sprinklers and everyone else is on the 30th floor, they are still as effective because they are trying to do something, maybe because the fires, maybe there's smoke and fire, and it's having a debilitating effect on combat, and people are trying to navigate through this building. But if somebody could turn on the fire extinguishers, system to put out the fire, that might be just as effective. So I wouldn't say that's splitting the party. I'm saying that their effectiveness in what's going to happen in it puts them together. If the two groups are split, two or more groups are split, and one person's action really doesn't have too much of an impact on the other group, then I think you truly have split the party, and then you're going to have to really divert your attention from one to the other, that kind of thing. Super Saiyan. I guess I could get my hair to stick up like a Super Saiyan. Power level 9,000. Alex, he says it can happen in real life too, depending on how high your adrenaline is and how high your pain threshold is. I think you guys are talking about the mentors, you barbarians, and all you guys are strange. Anyway, going Super Saiyan. Oh man, we always go off of tangents, don't we? Scott Poe says PCs are as heroic as their games health system allows. I absolutely agree with that, right? Don't play Call of Cthulhu thinking that you're going to be a superhero, right? You're lucky to get past the opening scene in most Cthulhu games, so before going insane or getting shot or having your limbs ripped off. So yeah, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is super cinematic. It's like, it's the you thought I was dead, but it was only a graze kind of thing. Alexi says, when someone drops to 0, I usually have them roll a Constitution saving throw for them to stay conscious, but they still have to make death saves. They're still bleeding out. All actions are made at disadvantage and half movement. And you could absolutely incorporate those any and all rulings or rules you want in your game. Absolutely. And then the people say, hey, I still want to play. Sure, let's do that. Absolutely. Yeah, Vincent says in Call of Cthulhu, you are at best a street level dramatic superhero. And that's at best, right? Maybe you're a better than average in Call of Cthulhu. Maybe. Yes, Vincent said this is already included in a cipher system for Numenera. Absolutely. David says talking to geeks is like trying to herd cats. Absolutely. It's absolutely like trying to herd cats, man. You just can't do it. We always go off on tangents. So, okay, back to splitting the party. Okay, so we've gone on tangents about going like effectiveness and cinematic combat and all those kind of things. But I think sometimes we tend to ignore objectives, right? Usually the default objective is I've got an enemy in front of you, kill the enemy. Catnip anyone, absolutely, meow. So usually the objective is like, kill the enemy. And sometimes I think we fail to realize that sometimes the win condition isn't killing the enemy. For example, big monsters chained up, protecting the entrance to a dungeon or something. Maybe it's good to leave the the big creature in front chained up because maybe there are enemies coming behind you and you don't want them coming behind you. So you leave the, I don't know, the basilisk or something chained up in front of the door. And so instead of killing it, you have to maneuver around it. Defend yourself from going around it, having people dodge their attacks or distract the creature while the other PCs or talk to the creature if it's intelligent, like a sphinx or something, and then go around it. And so maybe the objective is to sneak through a door rather than kill everything, which is very hard to get across to players when most objectives in most games are to kill the thing, right? Unless you are absolutely playing a game where the setting is all about the objectives and not about killing things, trying to tell your players, guys, you can actually succeed in this without having to kill all the creatures. And of course, we all know that from BXD&D, from the very beginning, you got experience points from killing stuff. So everyone would be like, stop talking to my experience points. I need to kill the big creature. Ugh. Crazy. DBJ, might be interesting to see how to separate groups in a setting where most characters can fly. Flight is that, flight is that one of what I've always talked about. It's like the top 3 things that piss GMs off or DMs off that can break the game. I think it's made too much of a big deal. It's like if you're going to introduce flight into your game, or at least PCs that can fly, I don't know why there aren't other flying things in your world. But flight in and of itself allows people to bypass hazards, and I think that's the biggest deal. Excuse me, just if my camera was better, you could see the dust as flies in the air, the static electricity. But anyway, it's because flight allows people to get around hazards, unless the act of flying itself is the hazard. Strong winds, fog, narrow passages, not being able to achieve the objective unless you physically have to get in touch with whatever the objective is, whether it's unlocking doors or moving heavy objects or going underground or going underwater to achieve your objective, even if someone can fly. Zala says, had one session where we had to fight a horde of undead. The rest of the party was out protecting the town while the wizard had to figure out and cast a spell to re-dead them before being overrun. Absolutely. And that is the objective, right? It's, hey, I can kill one or two undead at a time, but if the wizard makes the Arcana check, or the rogue finds the book, the wizard grabs the book and reads the spell to re-dead the undead, and they've gotten rid of 87 undead or even more that are spawning, then that makes them effective, right? That is the tension generator. And I know it, the wizard reading the spell to re-dead the undead doesn't feel like it because they're not rolling damage. They are not rolling against the armor class of the undead, but that should make them, it should at least make them feel like they are as effective, or at least don't be pissed off when they do something like that. Go, oh, right, that's a great idea. Go ahead and do it. Alex C says, sometimes going off topic or rails can have the same meaning as the original topic in the first place with a different twist. Absolutely. That's why we deep dive. That's why I always like, hey, come on, guys. Demi-daily deep dives. That's what we do. Visit says in DBZ, they usually focus more on enemies or different places spread around because most other problems could easily be overcome by flying. Even getting up the tower or getting to the Senzu beans was an adventure in regular Dragon Ball Z. In Z, they never even show how they do it. It's just not a problem anymore. Now that can become an issue too, where you set up a problem, the PCs easily figure out how to get around it, and then it's not a problem anymore. and that often is an issue in many games, right? Like there's a lot of easy buttons in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. For example, if you want to make a survivalist game, if you want to make a survivalist game in 5th edition, you are really going to have to go do a session 0 and go, listen, guys, these spells aren't possible. Like Goodberry isn't possible. Lehman's Tiny Hut doesn't exist. Create food and water, or just create water, you know, is a 9th level spell. Like you're going to have to go in and get rid of all the easy buttons, because if you want to have a game where traveling, you know, weeks upon weeks, months upon months across hazardous terrain is an issue, and someone goes, nah, I'm just going to, you know, I cast a magical barrier that keeps us completely safe. And oh, guess what? I can also create easily findable food for us to, you know, storms and weather and heat and snow, and it doesn't really matter. That does become an issue in and of itself. And so, you know, settings like Dark Sun don't exist in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, because I believe that they would have to go and modify the rules so much. I did an interview with the guys that create a Cryfoth, which is a very gritty setting, which you guys can take. You can find that video somewhere, whatever. I might even put it in a doobly-doo down below. But yeah, they go through and they make a setting book, and they go through all the spells and all the character class abilities and things like that, and say, hey, listen, these things don't exist or are modified because the whole point is it's supposed to be very difficult to get through. Very, come on, chat. There we go. Okay. Vincent says, that's the issue with power creep. Senzu beans are the same way. They are an easy way to heal up the hero to full again. It's like the real heal spell, but anyone can use it. Had to limit the number of beans and having enemies taking them away or wasting them on minor characters so they don't matter too much. Absolutely. Like power creep is always a thing, right? Like, you know, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, when you get past like 7th level, 10th level, I mean, you're talking like superheroes, right? It's not gritty realism. It's more like, it's more superheroic, you know, people being able to do things that are far beyond the realm of mortal man. Vincent says, that definitely sounds like the show or the party outgrowing a problem. Makes sense to just mention a problem that the players can now easily overcome. Good DMing. Yeah, Vince says in Dragon Ball, they were mostly valued because they fill your stomach for a day. And the fact is that usually ignored in Dragon Ball Z because the heal effect is so much more powerful. And anything in a game that is like abused or has a singular effect that is ignored in the rest of the world, of course, is a thing, right? It's the complaint when they made the Aarakocra race, and they introduced the Aarakocra race, and they started out with flight at first level because they can naturally fly. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is over OP. This is stupid. This is powerful." And I'm thinking, well, yeah, if you were the only PC with it, and there's absolutely positively no other flying creatures in your world ever with wings, it makes no sense. But if you're going to include a single PC with flight in my world, then that means that there is flight in the world. Right? It's like if you're going to have, if you're going to introduce ubiquitous healing everywhere all the time, then you're going to have to deal with the fact that that's a world where that exists as a thing. Yeah, Vince says, yeah, once you get around level 15, it becomes super duper weird with dimension hopping and fighting huge dragons regularly, handling problems of whole countries, etc. Yeah, once you get to that level, it's not so much, it's not dealing with mortal problems anymore. Yeah, Alex, he says, what's OP about flight? What goes up must come down. Absolutely. It's not overpowered when you're the single target floating in the air with the clear advantage. It makes sense that you become the target of the gnolls with their javelins, right? Of course, you're going to have the player balk and go, "You're always targeting me when I'm flying." It's like, well, because you're an easy target because you're flying. You know, it's just a thing. Yeah. Vince says, yeah, it would be easy to fix. Just invent a spell that creates a no-fly zone, even if only the PCs use it. I would use that sparingly. I just would have things that fly. We have things that fly in our own world. I wouldn't understand the problem with it. People shoot birds all the time. We have planes that fall out of the sky. People hide under things to get away from things that fly, like bird duty. There are predators that go after other flying predators. I mean, it's just whatever. Anyway, Alex, he says, open season on flying humans. Get your boomsticks ready. Yeah, you could dispel it. I think that's too easy. Like, well, I mean, not too easy. If an enemy has a dispel, of course, they would try to dispel a spell that lets you fly. If you have a natural ability to fly, like with wings, that wouldn't work. But, you know, I wouldn't default to that. I would default to whatever the world intrinsically says it would do with flying things, right? If there are tribes people that are used to luring or tracking down or attacking flying creatures, I would just have them, you know, do that. I wouldn't, you know, if there's a city and there's a problem with things flying over top of the city, or the city wants to defend itself, yeah, I would have a no-fly zone. But I wouldn't, like, every time you go to a village, there's a no-fly zone. Like, I wouldn't do that. I would just make it an intrinsic part of the world. There are things that fly and there are things that don't like flying things. Scott Post says, my very first character was a big dumb fighter who got a cloak of the bat. He flew at night constantly. I love the cloak of the bat. Cloak of the bat, cloak of the spider, wings of flying. I think it was a cloak that was basically like wings draped over your shoulders. I love that. I love those magic items. Vince says, I think flying is the third most talked about problem on your channel. Mimics, Mr. T, and flying. That's all we're about, man. We're flying Mr. T's, where it's just, you know, I pity the mimic. Kitty, really? Thank you. I love you, Kitty. Yeah, trying to herd the kitties. Scott Post says, flying enemies to fight was his favorite thing, and that was AD&D when PC death was easy. Yeah, yeah. Flying is the yeah, I kitty the fool. Thanks, Kitty. Yeah, thank you very much. Your logo should be a mimic with Mr. T with wings. I gotta make that T-shirt. No one would get it, but they'd have to tune in. Tune in for the Mr. T hour, where we talk about mimics and flying. Yeah, flying's a big problem. Super senses, anything that lets you see beyond yourself is a problem. And of course, like any other kind of movement, teleportation, dimension hopping, anything that lets you, like, basically ignore the plot is a problem. You know, X-ray vision, mind probing, any kind of ESP, you know, sight beyond sight, flight beyond flight, as Zala says. yeah, that is the issue, right? Like, it's those things are the things that, like, ruin the game. And especially if you combine all that together, the PC who has the powers of a mimic, who can fly and has sight beyond sight. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Pretty hard to deal with. Unless you're running like a superhero game, which is where it becomes like that is a thing that people do. I wouldn't say it's a problem. Says Alex, he says, seeing the future is a PITA ability. I don't know what you mean by that. Probably just a typo. Alex, he's plus in 2E, you roll for hit points, no maximum. Yeah, exactly. I remember second. I love second edition. Vince says, most problematic PC abilities: see into the future, which like gathering information from nothing, flying, teleporting, healing, reading thoughts. Absolutely. Shape changer, I would throw in there. Illusions are another big thing. So illusions allow, I think, people to have abilities that are far beyond acronym, a pain in the ass. Sorry. I was like, I know it means something, and my mind just couldn't go there because I was just reading the chat. Yeah, pain in the ass. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But yeah, maybe we'll do a whole week of that too. Oh man, I got a whole pile of things. Ideas here. Okay, so like, you know, problematic things like seeing in the future, flying, teleporting, healing, reading thoughts, shape changing, And I would add illusionary abilities in there as well. Just ability to, illusions, I think, grant people the ability to go beyond what they normally would. Illusions of fire, illusions of enemies, whatever, what have you. Time travel, yeah, time travel's rare, but is a problem as well. Teleportation just lets people to just completely ignore a plot, right? Flying lets people to fly over, over your adventure. It's like, oh, we're going to go to the Isle of Dread, and it's like, nah, I'm just going to fly around the island and see all the dangers, and then come back. Or like you said, the person who can see into the future is a major problem as well. Yeah, Vincent says it's Alex says, I like saying "arse" sounds funnier than ass. Vincent says it's like saying frag instead of the F word in Shadowrun. Yeah, or frack. They used was it frack on about to say Babylon 5. Oh, my mind just went blank, but you know what I mean. The wish spell is a big one. Although by the time you get the wish spell, I mean, really, like, is there really an adventure anymore? If you get a wish spell every day as a spell casting ability, like, is there really anything more to do? Battlestar Galactica, thank you. BSG. Sorry. Yeah, Battlestar. Yeah. But yeah, those kind of things, it's like, when you get to that point in a game, it's like, aren't you retired yet? Which, by the way, second edition, by the time you got to 10th level in the first place, you were pretty much retired, right? Wizards were creating towers, fighters were assembling armies, thieves were, running guilds. They don't do that anymore in a lot of the games, but yeah, by the time you got to that level, you really weren't PC anymore. Thanks, Kitty.
That was a great day. I love you.
Hey, baby, love you too. You too. Yeah, guys, we hit the hour mark. Lovely wife is off to work. The cat has involved herself, like, an hour is enough time. You need to pay attention to me, kind of thing. Alex D says, I limit the wish spell for immortal beings. No mortals should touch it. You could absolutely say, yeah, you can't get a wish spell. Or maybe the whole point of the game is the whole idea is to get to the point where you get a wish spell, and that's the end of the quest, kind of thing. Vincent said they did. I am listening to a Shadowrun podcast for 5e, and they use it all the time. Yeah, frag. Oh yeah, frag is. I think it's part and parcel of the game. I think it's one of the It's in the lexicon of slang terms in the book, just like in Cyberpunk 2020's got a lexicon of words, both mundane and foul in the game. Scott Poe, last Gamma World had a time travel, one action or round class. Yeah, Wish spell only works on your PC's birthday. Yeah, wish is easy fix. Just don't list any guaranteed effects and interpret it always in the worst possible way. Yeah, that's always the great thing. Your ring of wishes, the Ifrit that grants the wish, and then you're just sitting back as the GM, like, go ahead and wish it. Go ahead and write it down. There's so many ways we can do this. And of course, you get the PCs that want to write like a 5-page dissertation on one wish or whatnot, and that derailing the game. Like, okay, we're going to stop and have 3 games where we're just going to do this one wish. I know wish spells just whatever. It's I want to do what I want. I know that the game has limitations on what wish can do, and if you read the DMG, you can't wish for certain things. But whatever. I don't think it's a dumb spell. I just think that once it gets in the hands of the PCs, the idea of having an adventure just isn't a thing anymore, right? It's more or less boiled down to reality shaping, warping, and then it's always the problem of how powerful is the wish? Can you really wish to have all your stats 18, all that type of stuff? Tesla Ranger, I'd like to make a wish. I believe you know my lawyer. Yeah. Scott poses maybe gauge the selfishness of a wish as to how ironic you get it. And there's always a consequence Alex C says there's always consequences for each wish that is 10 folds over. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? It's I wish I had all the money in the world, and all the money just tumbles down on top of your head, you know, thousands of tons of coins and dollar bills and stuff like that. Yeah, you could do those kind of things. Vincent says use the first of your wish spells to wish for the other wishes to go as far as intended. You would think of that, wouldn't you? Yeah. But anyway, guys, come on. We're at the end. We've devolved into literally cat fighting, all those kind of things. But that's kind of the joy, right? We do that. That's the whole point of us doing the live streams. The link is already set up for tomorrow for future Fridays. We will end this on the splitting the party and using that in a future way. Hell, we started off this stream talking about the future and sci-fi settings and stuff and splitting the party. I think we'll definitely talk about people, hackers, people being online or using drones while other player characters are doing something. I definitely think we're going to do that. We'll talk about drones and teleoperating machines, things like that. I know a bunch of you guys are on your phone, so I get when I know when I see some of the misspells and stuff. You guys are fine. I may not be the smartest guy in the world, but I'm surrounded by the smartest, which makes me better. You know, oh, game ends. Peace on earth, game ends. Yeah, peace forever. I want to, you know, what do you wish for? $1 million in world peace. It's like, okay, one of those is possible. The other will just never happen. Vince says, here's your new friend, Peace. He is standing on the earth. Yeah, Alex, wish on earth every living creature dies. That's effed up. That's really that's super morbid. We're gonna have to end it right there. I think we're gonna have to end it there. You know, yeah, peace on earth. You know, wish for peace on earth. Every living creature dies. I get it. Yeah, that's pretty bad. But anyway, guys, I will see you, and we will all be in our crisp uniforms as we check in tomorrow. Everybody, including Prue, thanks for giving us this subject this whole week. We're not done yet. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you very much for joining in. Of course, all the information down at doobly-doo. If anybody who's brand new has stuck with any of these live streams to the very end, Vince, if you want to join in, hell yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do it. You want to join in tomorrow? You got it. Anybody wants to join in these things, absolutely positively join on in. Do I want you to join in? Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's always been an open thing to join. I don't get it. Yeah, I'll send you the link tomorrow. But yeah, Future Friday tomorrow, guys. Thank you very much. All the information is down on doobly-doo. The things that I do, the things that we are all about. Thanks for bringing the peace. Thanks for bringing the reliably intelligent, peaceful, brilliant discourse that you guys always bring to the table. Just keep it up. Negative nannies, you guys can go away. We're here about growing the community and being positive. So guys, see you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.